Is he really just a high school graduate? I am surprised. I cannot believe someone with such a low level of education is working these days. Well, if he were working at the bottom of society, that would be one thing. But to think that someone who is going to be part of my family and my relatives, especially the elder brother of my daughter's husband, is only a high school graduate. My younger brother was set to marry a kind-hearted woman, but her father was an extreme believer in academic status, and he showed strong dissatisfaction with the fact that I was only a high school graduate. We somehow managed to calm him down and made it to the wedding day, but this father-in-law simply could not bring himself to acknowledge me. To my disbelief, this father-in-law placed a name tag on my seat that read, "Poor high school graduate brother," clearly intended to insult me. On top of that, he said he would allow the marriage, but only if I agreed to cut all family ties with my brother's new family and promised never to have any contact with them again. A completely unreasonable demand. My brother was furious at the outrageous request, and finally, he revealed my true status to the father-in-law. The father-in-law, who had gone too far with his insults and mockery at the wedding simply because I was a high school graduate, was about to pay the price for his arrogance. My name is Henry. I am turning 38 this year. I have a younger brother named Michael, who is 10 years younger than me, and he is about to get married. Michael is a hard worker, and through sheer determination, he became a doctor and now works tirelessly at a university hospital. I had always known since long ago that Michael was the type to see things through once he started something, and I was confident he would become someone significant. That prediction turned out to be right, but I never imagined he would choose to become a doctor. Michael had always been good with his hands, passionately crafting paper models and woodwork projects since he was a child, creating various impressive works. His craftsmanship was far beyond his age, and he had expressed early on that he wanted to pursue a career in manufacturing or some form of artistic design. There was a reason why Michael, who had shown no initial interest in the medical field, eventually decided to pursue it. The truth is, Michael and I once had a younger sister named Amy. Amy was 6 years younger than me and 4 years older than Michael. However, about 15 years ago, Amy passed away due to an illness, and the shock of her loss inspired Michael to want to save lives that could be taken by disease. That is why he chose the path of a doctor. Our family consisted of 5. Me, my sister Amy, who was born 6 years after me, my brother Michael, who came 4 years after her, and our parents. My father worked as a company employee, and though his income was average, raising 3 children meant that money was always tight. Despite that, my parents were positive, and we siblings got along well, keeping the household atmosphere bright and cheerful. Especially Amy, by the time she entered elementary school, she was already helping our mother around the house, and when Michael was born, she took care of him with such devotion. I also tried my best to look after my younger siblings, but I could never match the way Amy doted on Michael. Naturally, Michael grew up following Amy everywhere, and even as he got older, he would always go to her for advice and guidance. Our lives changed dramatically when I was in high school. My father, who had been working long hours more frequently, suddenly fell ill from exhaustion and passed away unexpectedly. Of course, everyone had noticed that my father seemed tired. Not only me, but even Michael, who had not yet entered elementary school, never asked him to take us out on weekends. Instead, he was mindful of letting our father get as much rest as possible. But it seemed that my father's body had accumulated far more fatigue than any of us realized, and once his health deteriorated, it rapidly declined, and he was gone before we knew it. Naturally, my siblings and I were devastated, and my mother was consumed with grief, but our family did not have the luxury of simply mourning. My mother, who had been working part-time, drastically increased her hours, taking on another job during the night to earn as much as possible. As a high school student, I started working part-time, and Amy took over caring for Michael in my mother's place. Michael, the youngest, never complained, and we supported each other as a family to keep going. At that time, I was doing well in school and was encouraged to apply to prestigious universities, But considering our financial situation, I decided to work right after high school. I knew that as Amy and Michael grew up, the cost of their education would increase, and I felt it was my responsibility to start earning money as soon as possible to prepare for those expenses. Of course, I wanted to continue studying, but I could not imagine asking my mother, who was already working herself to exhaustion, to pay for my college tuition. Even if I managed to earn a scholarship, it would only reduce costs, not eliminate them, and I would not be able to contribute financially during those 4 years. The thought of my mother possibly collapsing from overwork while I was studying made it clear I needed to work and bring in a stable income as soon as possible. The job I chose after graduating high school was at a local cleaning company. I chose it simply because, at that time, it was the best paying job I could get while still living at home. There were many large factories and medical facilities in the area, so the company had plenty of cleaning contracts. This allowed me to work the maximum amount of overtime legally permitted every month, which meant I could take home a good paycheck, something I could not ignore. I worked hard, and soon my efforts were recognized. I was promoted to team leader. With that promotion, my base salary increased, and I continued to work the maximum amount of overtime, eventually earning more than my mother's monthly income. I gave all of my earnings to the household, allowing us to save little by little, and I became confident that I could afford to send both my sister and brother to college. Eventually, Amy turned 17 and began saying that she wanted to pursue a career helping others, like becoming a nurse or a caregiver. Watching her take care of Michael all those years and selflessly handle the housework in place of our mother, I was convinced that such a career would be a perfect calling for her. By then, Michael was already in middle school, and he would proudly say, "My sister is so kind. I think helping sick people would be the perfect job for her." "Do not worry about the money," I told her. "I am finally getting recognized at work, and if things keep going this way, I might even make it to management. I will cover your tuition with just one hand." "You are making such big promises again." "Well, if you insist, I will rely on you until I get my certification. But once I start working, I promise I will pay it all back." "There is no need to pay the money back. If you have the energy to worry about that, use it to make your dreams come true." We had conversations like that, and we all began to believe that the day Amy would achieve her dreams was just around the corner. We had finally overcome the loss of our father and were starting to move forward, but a massive shock struck our family right after Amy entered her senior year of high school and decided to enroll in nursing school. Amy was diagnosed with a rapidly progressing illness and was rushed to the hospital, but she passed away in just a few days. Because she had been healthy up until then, none of us, not even Amy herself, sensed any signs of illness. I could not comprehend what had happened. No, perhaps I did understand it in my head, but my heart simply refused to accept it. Why did Amy have to die? How could someone so kind and compassionate be struck by such a terrible illness just as she began to pursue her dreams? No matter how much I asked, there was never an answer, but I continued to scream those questions in my heart. My mother, who had been the first to recover from grief and work hard to raise us after my father passed, seemed to lose her spirit entirely this time. Michael, who had been loved by Amy since he was little, could not speak for days and refused to eat. After days of not eating, Michael became anemic and had to be put on an IV drip. While I sat beside him, he looked at me and said, "Henry, I am going to become a doctor. I am going to become a doctor and create a world where good people do not have to die like this." Although Michael seemed to be speaking to me, his gaze was somewhere far away. Most likely, he was directing his words to Amy, who lived on in his memories, declaring his resolve to her. From that day on, Michael completely stopped his hobby of crafting and dedicated every free moment he had to studying. He had always been smart and was expected to get into a top-tier high school, but from that moment, his focus sharpened with an unwavering determination to enter an environment where he could study cutting-edge medicine. My mother, still reeling from the shock of losing Amy, could not find a way to recover and seemed to have aged rapidly, losing her vitality. Fearing that she might collapse if she continued to work in that condition, I convinced her to quit her job and take some time to rest. Of course, I intended to cover all the living expenses during that time. On top of that, I made a firm decision to earn enough money, by any means necessary, to pay for Michael's medical school tuition. I had no concrete plan, but Michael had already set his sights on becoming a doctor and had begun working toward that goal. As his older brother, the only thing I could do was support his dream with everything I had. I had always believed I worked harder than anyone else, but from that point on, I approached my job with a renewed intensity. I kept working diligently, never cutting corners, even if others laughed at how inefficient my methods were. I focused on doing quality work and steadily increased my income. Eventually, Michael graduated at the top of his class from his high school and got accepted into the medical department of one of the most prestigious national universities, known to be incredibly difficult to get into. To become a doctor, he had to study for 6 years at medical school and complete 2 years of clinical training, but Michael finished all of it in the shortest time possible. After his clinical training, he immediately secured a position at a university hospital in the city. In the 14 years since Amy's death, Michael had pushed forward without pause, fulfilling his promise and becoming a doctor. Michael bowed his head deeply and expressed his gratitude for my support in covering all his school expenses. At the same time, I was filled with deep satisfaction, knowing that I had been able to support Michael's determination. I was sure that Michael, with his brilliant mind, would go on to fight many rare diseases, discover new treatments, and save as many lives as possible. Watching Michael pursue his dream of saving people like our father and Amy, my mother shed tears of joy and slowly began to regain her strength. After Michael became an established doctor and his career was on track, another piece of happy news came our way. Michael was getting married. His partner was a woman named Naomi, 3 years younger than him, who worked as a medical clerk at the same hospital. The two had grown fond of each other while seeing each other work hard, and had started dating back when Michael was still a resident. Apparently, Michael had told her early on that he wanted to get married once he became a full-fledged doctor. I was surprised that Michael, who had been so focused on his medical training, managed to find time for a relationship. I said, "I am amazed you had the energy to do that while working so hard." "It is the opposite. It is because Naomi was there that I could give my all to my work. If you ever meet someone you want to marry, you will understand what I mean. Henry, I know you have always worked for my sake and never had much freedom. From now on, I want you to think about yourself too." Oh yeah, I guess I will think about it someday. Since I had no plans of getting married myself, I quickly changed the subject before the conversation could go any deeper. "You will introduce Naomi to me and Mom, right?" "Of course. She finally agreed the other day." "Finally agreed? Does that mean Naomi was hesitant to meet our family?" "No, that is not it. She is a kind person, and if I asked her to meet you all, she would gladly do it. The truth is, she had some family circumstances that made her a bit hesitant to commit to marriage with me." "What do you mean? Does she have a family member who needs care, and she cannot leave her home?" When I heard about family circumstances, I could not help but imagine a situation where her family might be dealing with illness. So I asked him that. "No, that is not it. Naomi is an only child. Her mother has already passed away, but her father is still alive. In fact, he is almost too full of energy. To be frank, and I might as well say it straight out, her father is known to have quite a harsh personality. He tends to judge people based on their social standing. If the person has a high social status, he is polite and courteous. But if not, I see. So, if he does not think highly of someone's status or background, he openly looks down on them. Well, I have dealt with plenty of clients over the years, so I know people like that exist out there. I am lucky that I was able to become a doctor, so it is not an issue for me. But Naomi, she is really worried that her father might say something rude or offensive to you or Mom. I get it. If he is that kind of person, he might get upset just hearing about my level of education. But honestly, That is not something worth worrying about. Really? I do not care if someone looks down on me. To be honest, as long as you and Naomi are happy together, it does not matter to me what her father is like. Even if things do not go well between me and her father, it would not be an obstacle to your marriage. After all, the only time we would have to see each other would be at the engagement ceremony or the wedding. If I just keep things polite and minimal during those moments, I can avoid him as much as possible afterward. And besides, you are a doctor. Naomi's father will be satisfied with your status, and there is nothing to worry about. It really helps to hear you say that. Of course, on the day of the meeting, both Naomi and I will do everything we can to smooth things over. Michael promised to let me know when the family introductions were scheduled. Finally, the date was set, and Michael took my mother and me, while Naomi brought her father, Thomas, to a private room at a restaurant. The five of us sat around one table. Michael and Naomi introduced their families, and the conversation began. At first, Thomas only confirmed everyone's names and faces, sticking to basic small talk, so I started to relax, thinking, maybe this will go smoothly after all. However, as Thomas continued to drink wine during the meal, he gradually became less reserved and started speaking his mind. I work for a company that sells caregiving supplies. I am sure you all have heard the name before. The company name he mentioned was a large corporation that regularly advertised on TV and online. These days, life without caregiving supplies is unthinkable. I take pride in working for a company that provides such indispensable services to society, delivering high-quality work. By the way, I graduated from a top university, joined this company, and worked my way up to the position of section manager. I would not call myself the top of the company, but I competed with many graduates from A-ranked universities to get to where I am now. It is my little point of pride. Dad, this is not really the time to be talking about work. Naomi, feeling embarrassed by her father's long-winded bragging, tried to gently steer him away from the topic. Um? Ah, yes, you are right. I should not just talk about myself, I need to hear from everyone else too. Thomas then turned to Michael first and began asking about his work. He listened with great interest as Michael explained the medical treatments he was currently involved in. That is truly wonderful. To be fighting against such difficult diseases. That is a job only entrusted to truly exceptional people. I must say, I am proud that someone so distinguished is marrying my daughter. Up to that point, everything was going well. But when Thomas turned to me and started asking questions, the atmosphere began to shift. By the way, Henry, which university did you graduate from? In that instant, I saw both Michael and Naomi's expressions stiffen. However, I did not flinch. No, I did not attend university, I replied calmly, mentioning the name of the high school I graduated from. What did you say? The moment Thomas heard I was only a high school graduate, his tone dropped, becoming sharp and interrogative. Is it difficult to answer because it is not as prestigious as Michael's university? Even if it is a local school, I'm sure it has some decent ranking. There is no need to be evasive, just answer clearly. No, I mean it. I am really just a high school graduate. I did not even apply to college. Thomas set his wine glass down on the table with a loud clink. A high school graduate? Really? I am shocked. I cannot believe someone with such a low level of education is working these days. Well, if he were working at the bottom of society, that would be one thing. But to think that someone who is going to be part of my family, and my relatives, especially the elder brother of my daughter's husband, is only a high school graduate. Hey Naomi, why did you hide something this important until now? I did not hide it. It is not even that big of a deal. It would be stranger to make an issue out of something like this. You clearly do not understand how the world works. That kind of naive thinking only belongs in dramas or novels. Lacking a proper education means weak connections and no influence in society. That kind of person is always left behind, forced into lower positions and burdened with the worst tasks. And with less basic academic skills, they are always outpaced by others. If it were just a stranger, that would be one thing. But having someone like that as a close relative could bring disaster upon the whole family. I refuse to acknowledge someone like that as part of my family. Dad, please stop. No, I want nothing but happiness for you. That is why I cannot stop. Michael is perfect as a husband, but his brother being only a high school graduate is unacceptable. Unless you promise to cut ties with him completely, I cannot approve of this marriage. Thomas's harsh words seemed to shock Michael and my mother even more than they did me. My mother slumped her shoulders in despair, but Michael's face was filled with an anger I had never seen before. His shoulders were shaking, and he looked like he was about to explode at any moment. Haha, you really got me there. That is quite harsh. I immediately responded with a bright laugh, trying to shift the atmosphere in the room. That sudden shift in energy seemed to snap Michael out of it, diffusing the tension just before he could lash out. At that moment, I made up my mind I would play the fool if it meant preventing Michael from clashing with his future father-in-law. Everything you say makes perfect sense. I would never dream of using my brother to trouble Naomi in any way. Could you please trust me on that? I said in a light-hearted tone. As expected from a mere high school graduate, when things get tough, you cover it up with a laugh instead of logic. Well, even if you did try to argue, it would not be a match for me. I would crush you mercilessly. What a waste of time, getting serious with someone like you. Enough. Let us drop this matter for now. Thanks to my performance, Thomas seemed to regard me as a shallow-minded fool, and he seemed to decide it was not worth speaking to me seriously anymore. I did not care how much Thomas looked down on me. As long as I could avoid being a hindrance to Michael and Naomi's marriage, I would throw away my pride without hesitation. If sacrificing my pride meant Michael could marry safely, I would gladly pay that price. In the end, the family introduction meeting came to a close without further incident. Thomas left first, and the remaining three, Naomi, Michael, and my mother, sat there with dark expressions. I am sorry, Henry. I did not think it would turn out like this. Do not worry about it. From the way he was talking, it seemed like he would not care as long as I stayed out of your lives. After you get married, you will be living separately anyway, so I will hardly be around. If all I have to endure is a little grumbling until the wedding, I do not mind. Just focus on making sure the wedding goes smoothly. I really am so sorry. Naomi, you do not need to make that face. In fact, seeing how you handled your father just now made me realize what a wonderful person you are. Someone as genuine as you will surely get along well with Michael. I said that with a smile, trying to encourage both of them until the very end. My mother, understanding that I was deliberately playing the fool to ease the tension, finally showed a relieved smile. From that point, the only time I was supposed to see Thomas face to face was at the wedding. I was optimistic, thinking that if I played the same carefree, cheerful role I did today, things would pass without major problems. However, I soon came to realize that this optimistic assumption was far too naive. The day of the wedding arrived. Since the family introduction, I had not seen Thomas at all, and there had been no incidents. If I could just get through today smoothly, the marriage would go off without a hitch. I entered the wedding hall with my mother. There was still plenty of time before the reception started, and the reception desk had just been set up, so there were no guests around yet. Once the guests start arriving, we will be too busy greeting them, so let's take a look inside while we still can. I said this to my mother, and we headed inside the reception hall. The decorations were already beautifully arranged. We walked around the bride and groom's seats at the front, then moved to the family seating where we were supposed to sit. Wow, weddings nowadays are so luxurious. When your father and I got married, the reception was just in a small tatami room, my mother said with a nostalgic smile. But then, right in front of the family seats, my mother suddenly stopped and froze. I was standing across the table from her, and I saw her staring at one spot on the table, her lips trembling. What is wrong? You are looking so pale. Sensing something was off, I walked over to her, and that is when I saw the reason for her shock. The words, poor high school graduate brother, jumped out at me. On the seat where I was supposed to sit, instead of my name, there was a name tag that read, "Poor high school graduate brother." The name tag was in the same plastic holder as the others, with the same design and decoration as the rest. Who would do such a thing? My mother grabbed the name tag and tried to take out the slip of paper inside. I had a feeling and looked around the room. Sure enough, Thomas, Naomi's father, was walking toward us with a smug grin on his face. "I would appreciate it if you did not remove that without permission." Thomas said this with a sneering grin, clearly looking down on us. My mother, not quite understanding what he meant, stood there in stunned silence. There's no way the venue staff would prepare something like this. And of course, there is no way Michael or Naomi would do such a thing. "You had this made, did you not? Oh, it seems you are capable of some logical thinking. Not bad for a high school graduate. The paper and the print look identical to the other name tags, so I assume you told the staff it was for some kind of joke or party game and made them prepare it for you, right? Not bad. You seem to have a decent head on your shoulders. What a shame. If you had gone to college, maybe you would have amounted to something," he said, his words cutting without mercy. Hearing this, my mother seemed unable to stand anymore. She leaned on the table and then sank down to the floor, overwhelmed by shock. Up until that moment, I had been willing to act like a fool to keep Thomas in a good mood and avoid conflict. But now, seeing my mother hurt so deeply for no valid reason other than Thomas's arrogance, I could no longer hold back my true feelings. Anyone could tell what happened just by looking at it. What I do not understand is why you would go out of your way to set this up, why you would go so far just to mock my education, especially at a wedding. Do you not want to celebrate Naomi's happiness today? What did you say? Do you, of all people, think you can lecture me? Know your place, you worthless high school graduate. The moment I showed the slightest bit of resistance, Thomas's expression grew harsh, and his tone became even more aggressive. "I already told you at the family introduction. I cannot have a mere high school graduate becoming a relative of my family. If you were just some distant relative of the groom, I could have looked the other way. But an actual brother? Even as a joke, that is not funny. You say you care about Naomi's happiness? It is because I care about her that I cannot accept a low-level person like you as her brother-in-law. From now on, every time Naomi goes out into the world, she will be burdened by the fact that you are her close relative. As her father, it is only natural that I would want to prevent that this is nothing short of self-defense. And this self-defense you are talking about is why you made this name tag? What is the point of putting it here? Do you still not understand my intent? It seems your high school level education has left you quite slow. If you cannot grasp it, then let me make it clear. If you plan to attend the reception today, you will leave that name tag exactly where it is. And when all of my relatives are gathered, you will publicly declare that you are severing all family ties. You will write a formal statement, promising that after today, you will have no contact whatsoever with Naomi, and of course, with Michael as well. If you do that, my relatives can attend the wedding with peace of mind." My mother, still crouched on the floor, finally broke down and started sobbing loudly. At that moment, Michael and Naomi entered the hall. Noticing the tense atmosphere, they quickly rushed over. "Dad, what are you doing? Why is Mom crying? What happened?" I silently pointed to the name tag. That alone was enough for both of them to understand what had happened. Their faces went pale and frozen. Michael, Naomi, perfect timing. I was just getting this high school graduate to promise that today would be the last day he remains part of our family. What? Henry, is that true? What Thomas said is true, but I never said I would accept his terms. Still resisting, are you? Do you really think you have any choice in the matter? I will say it as many times as it takes. I will never allow Naomi to have a high school graduate like you as her brother-in-law. It would be a disgrace to the family. If you continue to defy me, I will not even allow you to attend the reception. Leave right now. Dad, stop it already. Even as Naomi desperately clung to him, Thomas's expression did not change. He just glared at me with unyielding contempt. High school graduate, high school graduate. Is education really that important? Yes, my brother only graduated from high school, but that is because he gave up on college to work and support our family after our father passed away. He worked hard, gained recognition at his job, increased his earnings, and even covered my expensive medical school tuition. Thanks to him, I was able to become a doctor. If you refuse to acknowledge him, then you might as well refuse to acknowledge me too, because I would not be here without him. Do not be ridiculous. Whatever the reason, you proved your worth through results. In this world, only results matter. Those who complain about not being rewarded for their hard work are losers, plain and simple. No matter the circumstances, anyone who ends up with just a high school education has no real future. That is enough. Michael's voice thundered through the room, and even Thomas's expression wavered for the first time. I suddenly remembered that Michael had once worn that same expression before. It was right after our sister Amy passed away from her sudden illness, when Michael declared, "I am going to become a doctor and fight against disease." He had that exact same look on his face. Michael's anger now was as fierce as it had been back then, as if facing the same sense of injustice. "Fine. If you are going to keep insulting my brother like that, then I will not hold back either." I was asked not to say anything, but I am going to tell you exactly who my brother is. With that declaration, Michael began explaining my current work and position. In fact, I had changed jobs about 7 years ago. I was no longer working for the cleaning company. I currently worked for Thomson Hart Group, a major corporation that operates welfare services nationwide. My role? I was an assistant to its executive leader, Trevor Thompson. How did I go from being a cleaner to working alongside the head of a major corporation? There is a long story behind that. I first met Trevor Thompson 7 years ago when he was admitted to the hospital. At the time, Trevor was over 60 years old, and he had already grown Thompson Group into a large corporation, with business going smoothly. However, his relentless dedication to work had taken a toll on his health. After turning 60, he developed several health problems and was forced to be hospitalized. Despite his poor health, Trevor was still full of energy. He would demand, "Get me discharged immediately. If I am not running the company, it will fall apart." His persistence was such a problem that even his doctors struggled to handle him. Although his conditions were not life-threatening, pushing himself further could have led to rapid deterioration. No matter how lively he seemed, he needed strict bed rest. Because Trevor insisted on leaving the hospital, they kept him in a special ward under heavy supervision, practically confining him to prevent him from escaping. Naturally, Trevor was in a foul mood the whole time, lashing out at anyone who came near him. He would complain to nurses, saying, "You are always so slow with your work," and he would bark orders at other staff and doctors. "Do this, do that." His behavior was so harsh that people started avoiding him entirely. At that time, I was assigned to clean Trevor's hospital room. Trevor showed no mercy to the cleaning staff either. He would nitpick their work, and if they could not handle his demands, he would shout at them and get them removed one after another. Eventually, nobody was willing to clean his room, and the hospital, desperate for a solution, reached out to the cleaning company I worked for, asking for someone who could handle him. That is how I ended up there. My supervisor said to me, "Apparently, he is a real piece of work. If even our ace Henry gets kicked out, we are out of options," before sending me off. And so, I began cleaning Trevor's hospital room, but I was quickly greeted with his sharp criticism. "Why are you doing it so inefficiently?" When I started working, Trevor would just watch me quietly for a few minutes, but then he would always speak up with his complaints. At that time, I was a group leader at the cleaning company, and I took pride in my skills and efficiency. No matter how important of a president he is, when it comes to cleaning, he is just an amateur. I wish an amateur would stop criticizing the way I do my work. That is what I thought to myself at first, so I did not take Trevor's comments seriously. However, at some point, I realized that Trevor was not just giving random instructions to complain. His criticisms were actually grounded in solid logic. Trevor had worked his way up through dozens of different jobs, fighting through hardships since he was young. He had an uncanny ability to observe any type of work and immediately grasp its core principles and discover its tricks. That was why he could watch the nurses and cleaning staff, understand the essence of their work almost instantly, and offer suggestions to improve. But his gruff demeanor meant no one ever took him seriously, which frustrated him even more. Once I realized this, I decided to take a risk. I said, "I think this part of your method is good, but from my experience, I think it would be even better if we made some improvements." Well, you are absolutely right. I just pointed out what I noticed while watching you, but you actually took it, tested it, and improved it. Not bad at all. He must have been frustrated from being away from work for so long. Trevor became surprisingly cheerful, even to the point of catching me off guard. He started discussing cleaning techniques with me, not only suggesting ways to improve the cleaning process, but also coming up with ideas for improving the tools we used, always asking for my thoughts. I was impressed, thinking, this man is a true workaholic to his core, and from then on, I began looking forward to visiting Trevor's hospital room to talk with him. A while later, when it was finally time for Trevor to be discharged, he made me an offer. "Henry, you are doing great with your cleaning work, but with your abilities, you could take on much bigger tasks. If you are willing, why not come work for me?" It was well known that Thomson Hart Group was a leader in the welfare industry, so I immediately jumped at the opportunity, saying I would do anything if it meant better pay. During his time in the hospital, Trevor had grown very fond of me, and when I joined the company, he kept giving me new responsibilities. I met his expectations, delivered results, and quickly rose through the ranks. About 2 years ago, I started working directly alongside President Thompson, supporting him with business management. When Michael finished his story, Thomas stood there in disbelief, his mouth agape. "You mean, you are personally acquainted with Mr. Thompson of Thomson Hart Group, and you are assisting him with business management?" "Yes. Unlike you, I do not have the habit of boasting about my academic background or career unless someone asks, so I never mentioned it until now. Thomson Group operates care facilities all over the country. Your company supplies quite a few products to them, right? I hope you trying to force my brother to cut ties with me does not end up affecting that business relationship." "What?" "It is not certain yet that it will affect business, but Thomson Group was planning to use a large quantity of your company's products for the new care facilities they are setting up nationwide. However, whether that contract gets finalized or not is now up in the air." "How could you possibly say that, even if you do work for Thomson Group? There is no way you would have the authority to change a contract that is already 90% finalized." "Were you not listening to what I just said? My brother has a personal connection with M. Thompson. He has been supporting him in business operations for years now. It has not been announced yet, but Mr. Thompson is considering making my brother his successor. If that were not the case, there is no way someone who came from a cleaning company, no matter how capable, would be elevated to a position like his personal assistant. Surely, as a university graduate, you should have been able to figure that much out, right? Good then. Are you planning to report all of this to Mr. Thompson?" "Actually, Thompson gave me a generous wedding gift for my brother Michael today. But since you, the father of the bride, are so determined to refuse my presence at this wedding, I suppose I will have to leave. Naturally, I will take the gift money back with me. I will have to return it to him, Thompson, and when I do, he is definitely going to ask me why. When that happens, I will have to tell him everything that happened here." "Wait, no, you cannot do that. If you do, what Thompson chooses to do after hearing the truth is not for me to say. But Thompson knows everything about me, how I left high school to work and support my brother's education. If he finds out I was kicked out of a wedding simply because I am a high school graduate, I doubt he will be pleased. Pushing out his successor would definitely affect our contracts. I understand. I understand your position now. So please, wait. Maybe I said too much. But listen, We are going to be family now. Let us not be hasty. Why do we not start over, calm down, and talk this through peacefully? I am amazed. Just moments ago, you were demanding I cut all ties with my own family, and now that it is inconvenient for you, you want to get along as family? Did you learn that quick change of attitude at university too? Realizing he had just cornered himself, Thomas turned pale. But I had no intention of showing mercy to the man who made my mother cry. In any case, no matter what you say, I am leaving. I will celebrate Michael and Naomi's wedding somewhere far away from your eyes. Wait, please. I am begging you, do not tell Thompson about this. I held up the name tag that read, "Poor high school graduate brother," right in front of his face. Even now, all you can think about is Thompson. You still have not apologized to me, nor have you said anything about making my mother cry. This is beyond redemption. Go ahead and leave this name tag right where it is. Have the ceremony just the way you planned it. I said that and walked out of the venue. Even as I left, Thomas desperately followed me, begging me not to tell Thompson, but I ignored him completely. I was not able to attend Michael and Naomi's wedding, but that did not change our relationship one bit. Afterward, when I returned the wedding gift to Thompson, he was furious when he heard the story. He immediately called the president of Thomas's company and announced that all their future contracts for supplying care products to Thompson Group's facilities were to be canceled. The estimated loss to Thomas's company was said to be in the tens of millions of dollars annually. Thomas was summoned by his company president, severely scolded, and then promptly fired. In desperation, he tried reaching out to me to ask for my help in talking to Thompson, but I ignored every single attempt. With nowhere else to go, Thomas showed up at Michael and Naomi's new home, begging them to contact me, but he was turned away at the door. You insulted my brother and made my mother cry. I do not recognize you as my father-in-law. It is your life. Fix it with your own strength, Michael told him. Dad, I do not want to see someone who said such cruel things to Henry. I am not your daughter anymore. I am Michael's wife now. You can live by the rules of your own little world, Naomi added, cutting ties with him completely. After that, Thomas's own relatives learned about the situation, and he was shunned by his family as well, leaving him practically isolated and alone. I have no idea how Thomas plans to live now that he is all alone, and honestly, I have no interest in finding out. After things finally settled down, I held a private party to celebrate Michael and Naomi's marriage, inviting only close friends and Thompson. It was a truly joyful celebration, and for the first time in a long while, I saw my mother smiling from the heart. In that moment, I felt sure that my father and Amy were there with us, celebrating together from heaven. From now on, Michael and I will continue to live with integrity and work hard for the people we care about to make up for the time that was taken too soon from the ones we loved.